Today we're looking at some Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, and specifically we're looking at the multi-classed character. So straight up I'm hearing almost immediately, why are we looking at the multi-class character? It has rules, it's got structure, it's got everything that we need. So what exactly is missing? Well, there's a few things that it doesn't actually cover. And what I want to do is just pretty much start with an explanation of multi-classing the character and just handle some of the objections and ideas that are associated with that. First, we're just going to talk a little bit about multi-classing, which is primarily a non-human activity. And when you multi-class, you're taking two classes. Usually it's the primary classes, so a fighter and a thief, or a fighter and a magic user, or a magic user and a thief, and so on. There are set combinations that come into play, and these all have their bonuses and all the benefits of having each and every class. So a fighter cleric is able to use armor and shields just like both classes could, but also the weapons of the fighter. The fighter magic user can use all the fighter and so on. Part of the reasoning that this is a non-human is that it takes a lot longer to actually become a multi-classed character as you're taking on both classes. And this is where some of the elements of what the DM has to work out when it comes to these things. So time becomes an important factor. And if we look at the age chart from the DM's guide, you can see that there's a set number plus various, then plus the variable for what the starting age is. And if you're a multi-class, you start at the maximum age of whichever the highest is. The classic example, the fighter magic user for an elf, that's 160 years for a fighter or 180 for the magic user. So we go the 180. By comparison though, that 180 puts the elf, which is usually the high elf, in that approximately the age of 21. Their affinity with magic means that they learn magic easier and they're a lot younger when they get to play. And it's the other classes that sort of make things a bit harder to work out. So for most demi-humans or non-humans, it's pretty much almost a mandatory requirement to take as multi-class, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got your dwarf, fighter, and you think, well, what goes with that? Throw in fighter thief. Okay, you might be thinking that what are the negatives of multi-classing? Well, and we'll go through some of those. There are a few elements that slow down the progression. But then again, if we have a look at the age, we're looking at a lot of years around. So the poor human who's going to become a mighty fighter, wizard, paladin, whatever, archmage, might make it to the ripe old age of 60. The companions of the elves and so on will still be in their mid-early 20s by comparison. So time is important. Otherwise you start to sort of lose track as to why certain restrictions are in play. And all the DMs need to work out how they're going to handle some of these, because as I said, there's the multi-class is there, but it doesn't go through some of the finer points. And it's some of these finer points in character creation that we need to address, and as DMs have an answer for, or at least have an idea. So looking at the character ability scores, every race has their minimums and their own individual minimums and maximums. And on top of that, those scores are directly related to the level that a character can reach. So for instance, a half-elf can always be a 5th level cleric. And as you can see, under Assassin, they can always achieve their levels there. But there are these other numbers. So the elf that has 18 strength can get to 7th level fighter. Otherwise, they can't achieve the full status of the fighter at 7th level. If they've got 17 strength, they maximum of 6th level, and if they've got 16 strength or less, then they're a 5th level. So this does play, but obviously the additional hit points really helps, as well as the to hit armor class 0 values, like the fighting abilities, the ability to wear armor, the weapons closet opens up, and so on. There's a lot of quite interesting elements that come through, but obviously being a fighter for an elf is not the primary role. Looking at here, magic user, which is their only other class that they can multi-class with, as with the thief. So at 18 intelligence, they get to be 11th level, 10th level for 17 and 16 or less, they get to be 9th level. So this is where the player decides whether they're a fighter with some magic, or if they're a magic user that can tinker with the toys and hit a few things every now and then, and a good backup fighter. Same too with some of these others. So all the benefits of the fighter and all the fighter rules and so on come into play. So the dwarf and the half-orc specifically, some of the highest level fighter levels with the multi-attacks and the ability to make a domain and so on. So at first level, working out hit points is pretty easy. You roll all the dice together and work out the average between all of them. So you roll a d10 for a fighter, magic user, thief. You roll a d10, a d4 and a d6, add all that result, divide it by 3, and that's your point score, which is okay. As it says here, on average about 4 hit points, which is fine at first level. As the levels progress in each, that's when it gets a bit trickier. You're rolling the dice for each class as you've progressed and dividing it by the number of classes. So a magic user thief has a d4 and a d6. When the thief level progresses first, odds are, then roll a d6 and divide that by 2. So what do we have to look at here is that the fractions are always rolled up, which means that as a multi-class character you are hedging your points a little bit as the game progresses. So a 5 becomes a 3 and so on if you're dividing it by 2. But you're suffering in other areas, which we'll discuss in a few moments. So as you progress and you gain hit points, it's all fine. At first level, you can just roll them all together, then add your constitution bonus, if any, and away we go. And speaking of constitution bonus, this is where the half-orc and the dwarf will want to put their 19s across. And this is where we flip over to some props. Hang on a sec. Well, a prop, I should say. It's a page printed out from the Deities and Demigods, which has scores of 19, because they're not covered in the player's handbook anywhere. The important things are obviously is that you've got the pickpockets, open locks, locate all those additional ability scores. Check out 19 intelligence, spell immunity to a first level illusion and phantasm spell. Most importantly, for the half-orcs and for the dwarves, 19 plus 5 for the fighters, no ones rolled. So all 1s become 2s, so a minimum of 7 points. Think of your fighter thief. So when you roll your thief Yeah, I suppose it doesn't matter too much, but still, it's cracking stuff. And with an additional +1 to your save for poisons. Okay, so progressing as a character. So let's have a look at what we've got here. Nuts and bolts wise. First level fighter, to make it to the next, to make it to level 2, you need to have 2001 experience points. As the character gains experience, it's actually divided amongst the classes. So for the fighter magic user, to be able to become a second level fighter would need in total 4,000 experience points, or 4,002 experience points. And if we have a look at the magic user over here, so to go up to both, you would look at it and go, oh, do I need to go up 4,500? No, because it's divided by 2. So you actually need to get to 5,000 experience points to be able to make it here. 5,000 experience points cuts to 2.5 each class, and away we go. And away we go. Then the new levels are rolled, so the fighter will go up in levels a little bit faster, but considering that the fighter magic user will be an elf or a half elf, it'll only make it to about between 5th and 7th level, maybe 8th if the half elf has 18 strength. So from that, you get all the abilities of both character classes. That's your hits, the armor, the weapons, the spells, and so on. As well as a few less hit points compared to a straight fighter, but a few more hit points compared to straight magic user. So experience points is our first head mess. Head mess number 1. Yep, they get cut in half, and if I'm a character that can only go to level 5 of one class, what happens once I've gone past that? Well, the experience points are still cut in half between the two classes. And this is where some of the additional rules that seem to be around but not enforced, it gets a bit grey. In some of the characters that were in pre-generated characters, the classes weren't exactly even. And so you might have had a 3rd level fighter and a 6th level magic user, as for a fighter magic user, for an elf fighter magic user. And the question is, so, well, why is one such a massive difference? And this is part 1 of how to handle experience points for a multi-class character. Not only are character experience points split between the two classes as much as possible, but there will be times when only one class will achieve the experience points. So for instance, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility for spells out of scrolls, experience points managed from that to go to the magic user side rather than to the fighter side, and so on. In combat, split evenly, away, it's all done. Same with treasure, split evenly, and so on. But class specifics, they can get in the way of some of that, which is an option. An option is also to not do that. And option 2 would be to every experience points is split evenly between the two classes, irrespective of what one does and what one doesn't do, what one class is specialized at. And this is a question for the DM. If the DM wants to do it in the way that as you use your magic side becomes stronger. As you explore the fighter elements, the fighter side becomes more prominent. That's entirely the purview of the DM and something that they need to look at if that's what they want to do. In character creation, there are a couple of points where the multi-classed characters need some rulings. And rulings is the word, as there are no actual specific rules, and I'm not quite too sure if there are any hard and fast guidelines laid out from the magazines that I can remember. But this is where one of the earlier questions came in terms of, well, if you're a multi-class, what do you do with the money? Cleric starts with 30 to 100 GP, Fighter starts with 50 to 200 GP. Okay, in that regard, if you're going to be a Fighter Cleric, is it each, is it both, or is it the highest? Is there some sort of average between the two? There are really only three options. Combine all, which leads for some cash heavy folk, but then on the other hand, this money represents equipment and time and all sorts of added parts, buying symbols and stuff, and equipment, specialist equipment, and their starting equipment as well. It's not just a straight out cash, but that's just how we see it all. So do you, if you're a Fighter Cleric, do you have 200? Do you have an average of all the dice divided by 2? Or do you have a maximum of 380? They're your options. And that's a ruling that the DM is going to have to make when putting all the characters together. In a similar vein, over at the weapon proficiency table, we see this. So that Fighter Cleric can start with 4 weapons. So do we have 6, or do we have 4, or is it split and go 3? And with the non-weapon proficiency, or the non-proficiency penalty, I should say, that would just be the best result for whatever class is being used at the time, which for the Fighter Cleric would be -2. That would make the most sense. Again, no rulings, just something you have to work out. There's no hard, fast rules. Handy to have an idea of how you want to perceive multi-class, because there's a massive encouragement for all non-humans to be multi-class. Otherwise, they run into their level limit pretty quick. And it makes sense that they get become multi-class, as it's what they do. You know, it's part of their racial traits. The Dwarven thief isn't always the thief as a halfling thief would be. It's more very much the locksmith, trap maker, etc., which an artificer, which really goes in with working with the background of a dwarf. And there's no harm in it. Here's a multi-class character that I made a while ago, the Magic User Thief switch. So with stats, not great, but reasonable, still pretty good, and a very playable character. Spells as well as the thief abilities. To use the thief abilities, you need to be in leather armor at most. I did toss up whether or not to put the fighter component in there, magic user, thief and fighter, and whilst the hit points probably wouldn't have changed much, it still attacks just to get a bow, which is really what the benefit would have been. In terms of weapons, I've got the weapons that I need for the character that I'm happy with, that suit the character's style and everything else. But paying that tax for the fighter class for 4 or 5 levels, but then all the experience points are divided by 3, there was a little too much to swallow. I did choose the better of the proficiencies, but I averaged out the coin. And that's pretty much how I've always done it. But as I said, it's something that every DM needs to work out themselves. So there's a good argument for all non-humans to be dual classed, which is fine. And I think aside from the half-orc, there's a real argument that they should all be dual classed in some way. At the very least with a thief or fighter element. But here's an example of what some people kind of worry about when you talk in those terms. The XP bubble. Now remember, at 2,501 experience points, the magic user moves to second level. For that to work in a multi-class, of course it's a total combined of 5,002 experience points. Let's have a look at the thief. The thief at 5,002 experience points, well, 2,501, sorry, experience points, cut in half, or the 5, goes to third level. You know what I mean. We're at third level. So first level magic user, third level thief. And that's what some folk worry about. Because if you're a 5,000 experience point thief, obviously you'll be fourth level. But let's do the 100,000k, the 100k challenge. So that's 50,000 experience points for each class. 50,000 experience points for the magic user, 6th level. 50,000 experience points for the thief, 7th level. So they even up. And this is what happens across most of the classes. The XP bottle bends and flexes, providing stability in the end. Now, that 100,000 experience points for that human character, presumably, well, as a thief is 8th level. So, not too far ahead. And likewise here, 8th level for 100,000. Again, not far ahead. So it does even out, and this is where the level limits sort of come into play. The elf with, where are we? Here we are. The elf with 18 intelligence. Once combined, 750,000 goes to 375,000, hits maximum level, is 11th level. You can finally walk around and say that they're a wizard. So 375,000, puts them at 11th level. As a thief. So if you had a magic user, a fighter element in there, sorry, then you'd be looking at almost 1 million experience points required. Because it still needs to be split by 3 in order to cater for the 3 classes, even if the fighter has stopped way back at, trying to flip, way back at 18,000 experience points, or capped out at 35. Same to the hit points, divided by 3. So triple classing is a risk, but it's a tax if you want the armor when you're not using your thief abilities, and the weapons if you want to use a bow. That's the tax you pay. So working out what actual level, you generally add 1 for every additional class. So a first level fighter, magic user, thief is effectively a 3rd level character because of all of the abilities they've got. And if you're a 7/7 magic user thief, you'd be considered an 8th level. If the DM was trying to work out who does what. So assassins, everyone's got a flat level for their assassin except for the halfling, who can't be one. So that's irrespective, because there's no prerequisite for the assassin, you're just an assassin. Which is nice. It's good for the assassins. And as I was saying before with the half-orc, whilst most fighters are limited to a strength characteristic in some way, the half-orc is not. But the half-orc is with the thief. So if you wanted to be a straight fighter, go for it. I'll support that. Fighter thief, yeah. Fighter assassin, yeah, that's a bit better. And fighter cleric to a 4th level. Yeah, 4th level. So do you want to flick over to the cleric and see what 4th level cleric looks like? Spell wise, 3 and 2 versus the half elf at 5th level, who can be 3, 3, 1. So as it defines, the first 3 levels of spells for the cleric are generally procedure and through ritual. It's not exactly or always through the power of the deity or belief. And this is probably perfect for things like for characters like the half elves who like to wander around and do things. So at 5th level, once you get your 27,000 cap, 27,500, that's it, you're done. Or 13,000 plus. And so on. So you better be good at being a fighter. But it's the tax. Alright, so today we looked at some multiclassing. I'm hoping I covered all the points that I wanted to make. Sort of explain a little bit more about why the non-humans have it. To give it to humans, outside of Lankmar, which there are no non-humans, so all humans get to be multiclassed anyway, just like everything else. You've got to be careful with that. I know there's a big, but I want my human, why can't my human be a fighter and a cleric? There are plenty of reasons out there where a fighter and a cleric and a fighter and a magic user and a magic user are using this, that and whatever. So that's just what you need to work out. Everything here has been designed by balance and game balance. So the limits of an elf to something, you got to remember, they live a lot longer. So they are going to always make their targets. If you take away all level limits, then you're allowing for some very powerful magic and powerful combinations. And if you let humans multi-class, then they may not have a lot of time, but they will also really power out. Anyway, up to the DMs, it's all the DMs. This is just how we played it, or how we try to sort of stick to the rules as we can, where we can. Dual classing is what the humans do, and I'll discuss dual classing another time. And I appreciate everyone. So make a note, let me know what your favoured combination is. Check out the comments, obviously, to see if anyone else has left anything. Have fun, peace out, and stay safe. Like, subscribe, view the Patreon. It's got notes up there for various things. It's got a direction to my Tableau account, where all my paperwork is kept. Have a look. Alright, thanks everyone.